After years of Max Verstappen carrying Red Bull damn near all by himself, it looks like he might finally have a worthy teammate in the Red Bull second seat. So maybe it's time to give him his flowers. Maybe it's time to recontextualize this success that Isack Hadjar's had. And to help me do that, I am once again joined by none other than Ryan, the Breadman Fruick. Ryan, what are your thoughts on this Frenchman this season?
I think he's doing all right. I think he's doing okay. I don't think it's as great as we're all pretending it is, but that's okay. They don't have to be incredible the second they get in the car. And I'm happy Red Bull is finally letting them not be incredible the second they get in the car. I think he's doing fine. I know that's not like the YouTube hook, but I think he's exactly where he should be. He's not,
Yeah.
He's exactly an Alex Albon. Not to bury the lead, he is exactly an Alex Albon, but like without getting Albon out of the team.
Yeah. And we're going to dive into that. I want to start off with Hadjar. I think he has been off to a generally good start. Through 8 rounds, he's had some bumps though. So far in the season, Hadjar has tallied a worthy 36.5% of the points for Red Bull, 42 to Max's 73. His season has had its bumps. Like I just mentioned, he left points on the table in Miami with his DNF into the chicane, the car failing out from underneath him in the opening round in Australia. He did qualify P4 there. He had a really strong start to that season. But otherwise, Hadjar has really only failed to make the points once in Japan of all places, partly, his own fruition. How does Hadjar stack up to Red Bull number 2s of the past, Ryan?
For me, I did do a little bit of looking while I had time today. And if we're going off of like finishing positions, like you said, he's looking pretty good. Like he almost had a podium in Monaco, like this span of his season. Now, to be fair, Liam Lawson got 2 races in experimental setup and then thrown to the Wolves. So I can't even really count him as like a Red Bull driver of the past. But like compared to Yuki, compared to Pierre, compared to Albon, he's like looking okay. I don't put Checo in there because Checo got way more time and he got a couple wins and stuff. And I think if they let Hadjar spread his legs, he'll probably get a win or two if the car was as competitive as that Red Bull was. It's just sort of... But for me, he looks like right where he should be. But when you look at now, it seems like the gap is growing to Max. He was closer at the start, and we were all impressed as far as just sheer pace. He's looking even closer to like 3 to 4 tenths off. He's finishing 30 seconds back in Austria, and he did that once before this season, which it's like, that's where I'm struggling to be like, he's looking great, because that's almost nearly identical to the exact same gaps that, like I said, Alex Albon was finishing to Max, and Horner did not stand for that. Helmut Marko did not stand for that. They took Albon, chucked him out of the car, and now we live in this beautiful world where we look at Isack and we're like, you're doing great, buddy. Max was only 30 seconds down the road. It's like, if they were the old Red Bull who was dominating everything, that's the unfortunate thing. Like we talked about last time we talked about Red Bull. If they were that Red Bull who's winning 23 races and was horrifying and like Cobra Kai, they would have thrown him to the Wolves already. He'd be with Liam Lawson back at V-Carb, and I'm like...
And we are gonna touch on that, like old guard versus new guard, but I do want to take at least a little look at the data, taking a look at BigDataF1.com, who, by all accounts that I can see here, do a pretty good job of tracking everything. I'm taking a look at Max Verstappen versus like all of his teammates, taking a look at the Albon years. This is his qualifying gap versus his teammate. This is on the average for the entire season. Daniel Ricciardo, we're going all the way back to Carlos Sainz. Like Sainz was insanely close to him across, 2015, 2016. Ricciardo is the only teammate in Max's entire history to have ever beaten him across the course of a season by a margin. And
in equal machinery.
In equal machinery.
He's Nico Rosberg.
And then that stopped being the case in 2017 and 2018. And then once Ricciardo left for Renault, we saw Pierre Gasly get his shot half a second off of Max's pace. You did mention Alex Albon as like the key point, and I've seen him talked about a lot across the seasons that Albon had shots, half a second and then 0.6 off on qualifying pace. So this is, and you can kind of see where I'm going with this. This is kind of where I'm building my argument that I do think Hadjar is kind of making a strong case for himself. Looking at Checo Perez, half a second, 0.8 by the end, or towards the end, 0.6. And now Sergio Perez, admittedly, in that 23 season, I think Max Verstappen's prime, greatest season of his career, arguably the greatest season of all time. Max has been disgusting against his teammates. That's the story I'm telling here. You can see the trend.
Well, yeah.
Liam Lawson in 2 races. We can barely call him a Red Bull driver. 1.1 seconds off. Yuki Tsunoda last year never even got 1 qualifying on Max either. 6.5 tenths off. But then we move up to Isack Hadjar, and he's 1.2 tenths. It's a very, very, very close margin across the two. Isack Hadjar did get Japan over Max Verstappen. The race result didn't reflect that success. But that being said, the biggest comparison, I see fans often comparing him to Alex Albon's tenure. Albon was wrongly dropped at that time. I do agree with that. He was thrown to the wolves, like you mentioned, and especially seeing how he's performing strongly with Williams since. But Hadjar is performing better than Albon, at least through these 8 rounds. He is showing competence in the car, and he's doing it by a large margin in comparison, at least to Albon. I think the biggest argument against Hadjar is his overall finishing time, though. I do agree with that.
Yeah.
Finishing behind Max, it is also, though, his first year with this team. It is also another year of learning for the second-year driver. I think he's doing a solid job for the most part. And now I'm going to lead you into the question of, would Hadjar be under scrutiny if this was the old guard? Would he be looked at as this like black sheep within the Red Bull fold that gets slaughtered by the politics?
I think Hadjar would already be gone. I think, or like not already gone. I think there would already be like, we would be at that point, you know, where you're like opening Instagram and they'd already be talking about the next guy. It'd be like Colton Herta is going to be in the Red Bull or something crazy that you're just, because that's all it was when it was Horner. Like you would see these poor second seaters like flounder, and not even flounder, because what we're talking about is like, I do want to emphasize, he's doing fine. He's doing really well. He's doing exactly as good as he should be. It's just Red Bull has created this toxic like work environment where like doing this well looks bad because like they don't accept being relatively slow, quote unquote, compared to a 4-time world champion. Like your first year, they've never been okay with that. They wanted you to show up and like start beating him, and no one ever did that, and they kept throwing him away. So I think if this was still like the Horner era, for some reason he would be like floating the idea of like, well, maybe we get someone else in there. Maybe, you know, we're gonna steal George Russell. We're gonna do something crazy. Actually, we put this guy in and it would strike Hadjar's, you know, confidence. He would only get slower for it, because like I would like to add, I bet I'd be curious how many of those drivers were even slower and even more affected because the entire time they were in the car, everyone around them's like, you're gonna get fired.
Just being crushed by the internal politics of Christian Horner and Helmut Marko. Yeah, I think that now that both of those guys are gone, this new era under Laurent Mekies, so far we haven't seen him be toxic. It seems a lot more calm, less internal politicking for sure. I think there is less of a stressor to find somebody to match Max Verstappen across the board at all times, which, mind you, is an impossible task. I think that it is blanketly an impossible task to find a Max Verstappen clone. Not everybody's dad hits them that hard when they're in cars, okay? And Hadjar's being given the grace he needs.
Yeah.
I think that he still puts the car in the top 8 regularly. That is the expectation with this Red Bull. He has exceeded that in moments. A big reason why I think he's getting more love is because the culture at Red Bull has just changed. Mekies is at the top now. Mekies knows Red Bull are quite a bit far away from fighting for titles. Hadjar's collecting points. He's creeping around podiums when things go in front of him start to crumble and disappear. And he's collecting points that keep him away from Alpine and P5, who are having, we talked about this recently, a pretty solid season. He is the cushion of performance that Red Bull needs right now. And on top of that, he's still growing and developing as a driver. He spent last year getting to grips with the F1 life and V-Carb. And now he's thrust into being Max Verstappen's teammate, one of the biggest teams in the sport. And he's still a work in progress. I think that's also a part of this conversation is he's only in year 2. And he's doing a pretty decent job in a car that is not fighting for titles, right? He's in the right place at the right time to be developing. And I think the grace he's also getting is in part to Red Bull still learning these 2026 regulations. They're still learning their own car. They have a banger engine that we found out about. The Aguo, Mercedes are apparently, still behind them. They need to work on reliability still. Their aero and development behind the scenes are all practically and almost entirely new since Adrian Newey departed for Aston Martin. So, like, all that being said, yeah, he's just in the right place at the right time right now. I don't feel like this is... I feel like the comparison to, like, the old guard versus the new guard is what's really at the heart of this conversation. Where does he need to go from here, though, is the next point.
I think he needs to work on race pace. He needs to keep delivering, I would say, within 1 to 2 positions of Max. People on the internet do love to talk about the seconds gap, like, oh, he's 30 seconds back, but like points don't actually care. You can be 5 minutes behind, but if you're still 4th and 3rd was, 5 minutes ahead of you, you're just whatever 2 or so odd points behind your teammate every time. And I think that's all he really has to do, because I don't think, like you said, I don't think Laurent Mekies is sitting there going like, this guy has to beat Max Verstappen. I think if he ever manages to do that, that'll be huge. I think he already had one qualifying. He outright out-qualified Max on pit. Yeah. So he's had these moments. Plus, this is a little off topic. I think this is his best year to do it, because it seems like, at least at the start, the Red Bull is a lot less tiered towards Max's psychotic need for the world's most oversteery car, which my theory and a lot of people's theory is that's why no second driver will ever really fit well, is because you're putting them in a car that is now actively trying to kill them. And most drivers are not going to want to do that. And Max Verstappen is like one of, the billions that is like, this is how I like to drive the car. I want it to constantly be trying to spin. And, so he's got this beautiful golden goose of a year, because as they get faster, and we've talked about this sometimes, I do have this fear that, like, to make Max faster, you will only see Hadjar start to slow down, because the car will get snappier and snappier as they're like, well, Max needs it to be pointier and pointier. He needs these insane turn-ins. He needs all of this. And slowly Hadjar will be like, the car is now, every time I get on the throttle, trying to throw me into the wall. So, yeah, I think every race for him, there's no pressure now from like Christian Horner or Helmut Marko going like, you have to do this or you're fired. But now the pressure is like, the time is kind of there that like I do have to be like the guy, and I have to prove to them that I'm consistently getting these points. Because even for all the jokes we make about Sergio Perez, because like he was, at the end, the Red Bull sort of made him look like not a good driver. Look at him in Cadillac. He's like 6/10 gapping Valtteri Bottas, and Valtteri Bottas wasn't necessarily like bad compared to Lewis Hamilton. He was so like, clearly the Red Bull was hard to handle in his years. So like Red Bull chews up drivers and spits them out, and Isack doesn't deserve that. He's incredible. I think he's a great kid. Everyone seems to love him. You got 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton coming out and hugging you. You got 4-time world champion Max, who has like no friends, only saying good things about you, and your teammate. So like, if you can convince those 2 dudes that you're pretty cool, I think you just gotta, if he could close it down to even like 15-second gaps and just constantly be like right behind Max. And like you said, it's nice to have a season where all the Red Bull points aren't just Max points, where you're looking at like, most of it's like 40% Isack showing up, especially when Max doesn't get off the line in Monaco, and you're like, oh, there's still a Red Bull here. Like that Red Bull's up in 3rd. Well, 4th.
Yeah. But and even in Monaco, that's a good point. Like he did enough of a job to bring it home. He got the champagne spray and all that kind of stuff. But a P4 in Monaco is still stellar. That is still an incredibly impressive result, regardless of the penalty being overturned or not. You mentioned earlier about like other drivers being caught out by Max's setup too. I mean, yeah, Liam Lawson in 2 races, 1.1 seconds off of Max's qualifying pace, down in hell in like P20 during those seasons. Yuki Tsunoda was an afterthought. I think it was like a huge day if he scored a point. I think that Hadjar has come into Red Bull at the perfect time. You've got this major change in leadership. We talked about that pretty extensively already, but you've also got a brand new car. I said this going into the season, and I'm repeating it now. This is the base level of Red Bull. You get to see this car develop and change, not just for Max Verstappen, but for this guy that you believe in Isack Hadjar. He has come in at the right time. And I'm not saying that like, he's just a benefit of, the circumstances, but the circumstances are kind of in his favor, but he's also very good. He is doing the job. He got to spray the champagne in Monaco, P4, the penalty, whatever. But his run of form since Miami has been solid. We talked about, you just got to get the points, regardless of if you finish a lap down or if you're finishing within 5 seconds of Max Verstappen, a P5 in Canada, even on a very challenging day, is still a good day. That's still points in hand. P4 Monaco, P6 in Barcelona, and now P6 in Austria. These are solid results. Taking what is there, taking what is in front of him. And in Austria, by the way, finishing in front of Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris on merit.
Whoa, buddy.
I'm just saying.
Buddy. We didn't need to bring in my guy.
I'm just saying, he did do it.
So
there is progress being made.
Yeah.
I think he needs to make his way, to answer my own question, what does he need to do? Where does he need to go from here? He needs to make his way to his first podium with Red Bull on merit, one that actually sticks. He's had a tough competition this year, of course. The car is decidedly probably fourth, on an average weekend. But after seeing him just get better and better at VCARB last year, he ended up getting that, podium in the Netherlands. He ended up being the beneficiary of a Lando Norris DNF, but he was right there fighting off a Mercedes of George Russell. I think he's capable. And if Max, for some reason, we keep hearing these conversations about Max Verstappen and McLaren, things could really shake up, blah, blah, blah. And Max decided to leave. I think that Hadjar is in prime position to take over as this face of Red Bull Racing. I think he could take that ball and run with it. Is he a future 4-time world champion? Who knows, right? But I think that Red Bull are moving in the right direction. I think their approach to let's take this slowly. Let's make sure that we're doing it correctly. Let's not rush things to try to get back to where we were. The expectations of where we were 23 wins for one driver and an insane world championship that will probably never be replicated, right?
Yeah.
That is the peak of all peaks. Red Bull did it. To give credit to Christian Horner and Helmut Marko, eventually that insanely toxic culture did win out, and it did win an incredible championship where they only lost one race.
Yeah.
But this is a new guard. This is all very new. The final question, finally, is the curse lifted?
I hope so. This is kind of going to dip back into your last question. I do think, unfortunately, right now he is benefiting a lot from we're still in this part of the new regs causing a lot of DNFs. And it seems like if you just survive, you'll get like P8, P7, P6 just off of like merit of your car finished, because in front of you, Kimi Antonelli's engine might explode. Charles Leclerc loves that wall. He's gonna kiss it. Like, you get all these things for free, and like as that slows down, as they get settled into the reg, everyone figures out their car, reliability gets better. Merc's working on reliability. Ferrari isn't. Like, all these things are gonna be like coming, and it's all. I think that 30-second gap is going to become more of a problem, and he might see himself falling more out of the points. So he does, I think, need to close that in, and like that's. And then also his starts have been problematic. That's like his one, if I had one area, like what does he need to do? He probably needs to get better at starting, kind of like Kimi. And then I think the curse is lifted. Then you have a capable driver who, like you said, at least in qualifying as good as Danny Ricciardo comparatively to Max on like the base level Red Bull. So all you really have to do is work with him on these like two areas, and he'll be this insane foundational guy who's going to build up. He doesn't seem to be threatening to go play iRacing every weekend. So when that guy goes to play iRacing, you have this guy who's like here, and he might not make you build the car in such a psychotic way that then you could get another guy in who loves the car. He might be better for Red Bull in the long run if Max were to do something like you said, go to McLaren somewhere. I'm not saying he's, better than a 4-time world champion, but I'm saying overall, in a design philosophy sense, a guy who likes a less oversteery car, that opens up tons of options for who your second driver is. Suddenly,
more
Liam
drivable
gets to
car
come back
for your second driver. Exactly, 100%.
And he beat the crap out of Liam in the head-to-head in VCARB. So
he did. And look, we've been praising Liam very
that's what I'm saying. So
in like his performance, and like the Red Bull. I feel like even that conversation, we could have a conversation about like how good Liam's been singularly in a certain moment. We did talk him up quite a bit last week, but to answer my own question, is the curse lifted? Answer, almost. I mean, we're trending in the right direction, and I think that's hopeful. And I feel like if you're a Red Bull Racing fan, you have to feel hopeful about the driver lineup you've currently got, potentially even going into the future. Look, would it be tragic if Max were to leave Red Bull? Yeah, but I don't feel like you're in unsafe hands with Isack Hadjar potentially leading the way going forward. But I do want to know what the TLPs think of Isack Hadjar. Has he exceeded your expectations this season? Is he the answer to the Red Bull 2 problem? Do you hate Isack Hadjar? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, of course, please drop a like, subscribe to support the channel. We're chasing 1,000 subscribers. We would certainly appreciate your support. Join the rest of the TLPs. Share the video with your friends, fellow F1 fans. We're going to be returning to live react alongside the British Grand Prix. At least I'm certainly going to be. You know, Ryan's got to figure out his plans. But that's going to be the stream this upcoming Sunday. Do not miss it. We got plenty of content coming in between. Until next time, that is Ryan the Breadman Fruick. I am Tristan Ryans. Be safe, be well, and let's go race.